"This wedding cannot happen," Daniel said, standing in the middle of my wedding venue, in front of 63 people who had traveled from 3 states to watch me marry someone else. I set down my glass of water. I straightened my tie. "Okay," I said. He was my ex, and the man I was about to marry was standing 10 feet away. "My name is Marcus Webb. I'm 31 years old. Daniel and I had been together for 4 years, separated for 14 months, and I had spent exactly none of those 14 months thinking he would walk through the doors of the Riverside Hall on the afternoon of my wedding rehearsal dinner and announced to the room that the ceremony scheduled for the next day was, in his words, a mistake everyone was about to regret. The room went the specific kind of quiet that only happens when something has gone genuinely wrong. Not the quiet of polite discomfort. The quiet of 63 people collectively holding their breath. My fiancée, Priya, was standing near the head table. I could see her from where I was. She had not moved. Her mother had grabbed her arm. I want to tell you what Daniel looked like in that moment, because it matters. He was wearing a gray wool coat I had never seen before, which meant he had bought it after we split, which meant some part of him had been planning this long enough to dress for it. His hair was different, shorter. He looked like a man who had rehearsed this entrance, who had imagined the room turning toward him, who had expected that his arrival would feel like rescue. He was looking at me the way he always looked at me when he wanted something. Like the answer was already yes, and I just hadn't said it out loud yet. I had loved Daniel for 4 years. Deeply, completely, in the way you love someone when you're 26 and you believe that intensity is the same thing as rightness. We had met at a graduate architecture conference in Chicago. He was presenting a paper. I was in the back row eating a granola bar. He had spotted me mid-sentence and lost his place in his notes. He told me that story on our 3rd date, laughing, and I had thought it was the most romantic thing I had ever heard. What I did not understand then, what took me nearly 4 years to understand, was that Daniel had a very specific way of loving people. He loved you most when you were uncertain, when you needed him to confirm that you were good enough, smart enough, worthy enough to be standing in the same room as him. He fed on the gap between who you were and who he suggested you could become. The moment you closed that gap, the moment you stood up straight and stopped needing the confirmation, something in him shifted. The first time I noticed it clearly, we had been together for about 8 months. I had just received a promotion at the firm where I worked. It was a significant one. I had gone from junior associate to project lead on a mid-rise residential development downtown. I came home that evening with a bottle of wine and told Daniel about it at the kitchen table. He looked at me for a moment. Then he said, "You know, everyone thinks you only got that because you're close with Harmon, right?" Harmon was the senior partner. I had worked under him for 3 years. The implication was clear. I said, "That's not what happened." Daniel shrugged. "I'm just telling you what people are saying. I thought you'd want to know." He poured himself a glass of wine. He didn't pour one for me. Something in my chest went very still. I got my own glass from the cabinet. I poured it myself. I sat down across from him and I smiled and I talked about something else. But I filed that moment away in a place inside me that doesn't forget things easily. It happened again, differently, about a year later. We were at a dinner party hosted by mutual friends, and I had told a story that made the table laugh. A long, winding story about a construction site mix-up that had resulted in an entire floor of a building being temporarily tiled in a shade of pink the client had specifically rejected. Everyone at that table laughed hard. It was the kind of laughter that fills a room. On the drive home, Daniel was quiet for a long time. Then he said, "You always take up so much space in rooms, Marcus. It's a bit much sometimes." I looked at the road ahead. "Okay," I said. He kept going. "I'm not the only one who notices. It can come across as attention-seeking. I'm just being honest with you because I care about you." He used that phrase often. "I'm just being honest with you because I care about you." It was the frame he put around everything that was designed to shrink me. The honesty was always about reduction. I was too loud, too confident. I laughed too easily. I took up too much space. I never yelled at him about it. I want you to understand that. I never threw the words back at him. I just kept filing things away in that quiet place inside me. And I kept watching, and I kept learning the exact shape of what he was doing. The breaking point arrived on a Tuesday. We had been together 3 years and 4 months. I had been offered a position at a firm in Portland. A significant position. Not just a promotion, a partnership track offer at an internationally recognized practice. The kind of offer that arrives once, if it arrives at all. I told Daniel over dinner. I was calm. I had thought about how to present it. I told him it was an opportunity one wanted to discuss together, that I hadn't made any decisions, that I wanted to think about what it would mean for us. He put his fork down. Portland, he said. Yes. You'd seriously consider uprooting everything we have here for a job. It's not just a job. It's everyone I've talked to about your career has said the same thing, Marcus. You always prioritize ambition over the people in your life. It's a pattern. You've been doing it since before we met. He said this slowly, carefully, like he was reading from a document. This is just embarrassing, that you would even bring this to the table as a serious option. I sat with that word. Embarrassing. I looked at him across the table. He had the expression he always wore when he believed he had just said something definitive. Settled. Final. I picked up my fork. I finished my dinner. I washed my plate. I said goodnight, and I went to sleep. 2 weeks later, I called the firm in Portland and accepted the offer. 3 weeks after that, I ended things with Daniel. He did not take it quietly. He cycled through anger and bargaining and what he framed as clarity. He told me I was making the worst decision of my life, that I would realize this eventually, that I was running away from something real because I was afraid of real intimacy. He said these things with complete confidence, the way he said everything, as though the firmness of the delivery was evidence of the truth. I listened. I said very little. I moved to Portland. I met Priya 11 months later at a city planning commission meeting where we were both presenting on the same block of waterfront development and disagreed loudly and specifically about setback regulations. She laughed at the end of the meeting and said, "You made some good points, even the wrong ones." I asked her to dinner. She said yes. Priya was the first person I had been with who never once suggested I was too much. She took up exactly as much space as she needed to, and she expected me to do the same. And there was something so profoundly restful about that, about being with someone who didn't require your smallness in order to feel large. We got engaged on a hiking trail outside Portland on a Saturday morning in October. It was raining slightly. She said yes before I finished asking. We planned a wedding for the following spring in Sacramento, near her family. 63 guests. The Riverside Hall. A rehearsal dinner the evening before. And that was where Daniel walked in. "This wedding cannot happen," Daniel said, standing in the middle of my wedding venue, in front of 63 people who had traveled from 3 states to watch me marry someone else. I set down my glass of water. I straightened my tie. "Okay," I said. He was my ex, and the man I was about to marry was standing 10 feet away. He walked toward me. The room had not started breathing again yet. He said, "Marcus, I need you to hear me. I know this is a lot. I know the timing is, I know. But I drove 6 hours to be here because I couldn't let you do this without knowing the truth." "The truth," I said, "that I made a mistake. That I understand that now. That what we had was real and I handled it badly, and you deserve to know that before you stand up there tomorrow and say words you can't take back." The room was extraordinary in its silence. I looked at him. His gray wool coat, his rehearsed expression, the specific way he was holding his body, slightly open, slightly vulnerable, performed with the precision of someone who had practiced this in a mirror. "Daniel," I said quietly, "you drove 6 hours to my rehearsal dinner." "Yes." "In a new coat." He blinked. "I think you should go," I said. His expression changed. The vulnerability curdled. I had seen it happen before, that curdling, and I recognized it immediately. "You're seriously going to dismiss me right now? In front of all these people?" "I think you should go," I said again. Same volume, same tone. He left. The room exhaled. Priya was beside me within 30 seconds. She took my hand. She didn't say anything. She didn't need to. We stood there together until the room settled back into itself, and then dinner resumed, and the evening continued. That night, at 11:47 p.m., the texts began. The first phase was anger. "I can't believe you embarrassed me like that. Do you have any idea how humiliating that was?" Everyone in that room was staring at me. "You could have handled that with some dignity. You always choose performance over honesty. You always choose the audience over the real thing. This is exactly what I was talking about. You never change." I read them. I put my phone face down on the nightstand. At 1:22 a.m., the second phase. My card got declined at the gas station. I'm on the highway. I have almost no gas left. I know you probably froze the account, but we were still on the joint savings until the end of the month, and I needed that. Can you just call the bank? I'm not asking for anything else. Just this. We had closed that account 11 months ago. I had the paperwork. I did not reply. At 3:08 a.m., the third phase. Marcus, please. I know I handled everything wrong. I know that. I've been sitting with it for 14 months, and I know. I'm not trying to ruin your life. I just needed you to know that you meant something to me. That it was real. That I am sorry. Please just tell me you know that it was real. Something in my chest went very still. I picked up my phone. I typed 2 words. I know. I put the phone down. I did not send it. At 5:42 a.m., he called. I let it ring 4 times. Then I answered. Marcus. Daniel. Just listen to me for one. Daniel. He stopped. Last night is done, I said. The account you mentioned has been closed for almost a year. I don't know what card situation you're describing, but it has nothing to do with me. I paused. Don't come to the ceremony. You can't just. Don't come to the ceremony. You can't just. Don't come to the ceremony. He started yelling then. Not words at first. Just sound. Then words. About wasted years. About how I had always made him feel like he wasn't enough. About how this was actually about my ego and not about love at all. I held the phone. I listened. When he took a breath, I said, Goodbye, Daniel. I hung up. At 8:15 a.m., my phone rang again. It was our mutual friend, Caleb. I picked up. Marcus, I know this is bad timing. Caleb, he's devastated. He just needs to hear from you that. Caleb, I said, whose wedding is today? A long pause. Yours, Caleb said. Right, I said. I hung up. The ceremony was at 3 p.m. I stood at the front of the room, and I watched Priya walk toward me, and I felt something in my chest open like a window in spring. She was wearing a deep red dress her mother had helped her pick out. She was not crying. She was smiling, the specific smile she saves for moments she finds both funny and true. We said our words. We meant them. That evening, between the dinner and the dancing, Daniel sent one final message. I read it later, much later, after everything had settled into its right place. It said, I think I loved you most when you were unsure of yourself. I don't know what that says about me, but I think you deserve to know it. I stared at that message for a long time. Long enough that Priya noticed and asked what I was reading. I showed her. She read it. She handed the phone back. She said, He's not wrong about knowing himself. I looked at her. She said, Are you going to reply? I typed one line. I sent it before I could rethink it. I hope you find someone who makes you want to love them when they're certain. He never responded. I didn't expect him to. 6 weeks later, by mutual arrangement, he collected the last of the things he had stored at my mother's house. Books, mostly, and a portable record player he'd left there during the move. My mother was home. I was not. She told me he looked fine. She told me he took everything and left quickly, and that he paused at the door for a moment like he was going to say something, and then didn't, and then was gone. She told me he left one record on the kitchen table. Kind of blue. Miles Davis. The album we used to play on Sunday mornings. I don't know if it was an accident or a message. I have chosen to believe it doesn't matter. Here is what I know now, standing at the distance of a year and a half from that rehearsal dinner, from that gray wool coat, from a man who drove 6 hours not to win me back, but to confirm that I still existed as someone he could affect. Some people love you most when you are half-built. They move in before the walls are up, and they tell themselves they're helping with the construction, but what they're actually doing is making sure the door remains unlocked. When you finish the building, when you put the last walls up yourself, without permission, without asking, they experience it as an act of violence. They call it selfishness. They call it ambition. They call it taking up too much space. What I could not have told you at 26, but can tell you now, the people who love your certainty are rarer than the people who love your doubt. Find them. Stay near them. Let them see you take up space. The morning of my wedding, I was not afraid. I was not uncertain. I was not waiting for someone to confirm that I was enough to be standing where I was standing. That, more than anything, is what Daniel could not forgive. And here is the question I will leave with you. The one I still turn over sometimes, late at night, when the house is quiet. If someone loves you most when you are broken and loves you less as you heal, are they wrong to grieve the person you used to be? Is the love less real because of what it needed to survive? And if you have ever loved someone most in their uncertainty, if you have ever, quietly, preferred them unsure, then what does that make you? The door is unlocked. Walk through it or don't, but know which one you're choosing.